Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell
Hey,
KC
welcome
Hill.
to the last
and up to the Great
DJ.
White
My name
North
is
in
Mitch
Vancouver
Hill.
is
I am the last
Alexander Knight.
DJ, and I've got a cohort of friends here to help me get the show going. But thank you to show number 70. We have gone up to number 70 after about a year and a few months of being on the air, which is really cool. And as always, our show is brought to you by our friends at Arby's. Arby's has the meats, and they also have a great app. They have an app going right now for, I think it's like cheesy fries or something like that. But every day on your phone, you'll get a little beep from Arby's, and they'll tell you about specials and discounts and things you can have. And I guarantee you're going to save a lot of money just using that app. So our friends at Arby's, thank you very much for sponsoring the show. It's we'll call it the broadcast Boffins version of today's show. And the Boffin, head Boffin himself is here, Mr. Alexander Knight. Give him a big hand.
Where's the sound effects when you need it, right, Mitch? It's
What
good to be
sound
here
effects?
It's good to be here for episode 70 of The Last Angry DJ. Yeah, I just had a bunch of problems this morning. This is episode 70 of The Last Angry DJ. Thanks for all of you for joining us. If you'd like to chat with us during the show, there is only one way you can do that. You are going to have to use Makana, our Q&A system, and you can do that by going to ask.thelastangry.dj.com. You'll see that right on lower third, right down here. Just open your web browser on your mobile device or desktop computer, any device you have. Ask.thelastangry.dj.com. Post your questions there for us and also chat with us during the show. We got Laura Thompson here on the back end managing our questions, who's our community manager. It's good to have you. And for those of you that are just joining us today, if this happens to be your first time, if you're a new person, this is the show where we interview luminaries in the world of broadcast, content creators, podcasters as well. And it's the show that I like to say intersects old media versus new media. But unlike Iron Chef, it's not about whose industry reigns supreme. It's about discussing the ongoing challenges that our industries are facing. And we'll be getting to that today when we get to our main topic momentarily. I'd like to also introduce another person, and that's part of our panel, Mr. Mark Giuliani. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great, Alex. How is everyone else? You doing
Just
well, Mitch?
Marvy.
I'm good.
All right.
Marvy.
Just peachy.
Well, this new question and answering system that we are using is doing great. We've got a bunch of questions stacked up. We're looking to have a really good show today. Mitch, who do we have coming up in the future?
I mean, coming up as guest on the show?
Yes, guest on the show, yes.
The President of the United States is going to be on in another week.
Wow.
And we're going to reunite the Beatles on the show. So that should be exciting stuff to look forward to. Mark, who's our first question coming in from?
Our first question is coming from Pedro Gonzalez. What's the deal with radio stations promoting commercial-free for the next hour, but then jumping into between songs to promote the station over and over and over again?
Well, Pedro, I can answer this question. What's happening is they're lying to you. They're saying that station promos and liners don't count as commercials. So technically, no commercials being played for a product or a service, but it doesn't mean they can't talk about the new Q or the loud proud Rat 92 or whatever the station may be called this week. So, listen, stations are a branding machine. Their job is to brand their call letters and their little slogans every way that they can. Unfortunately, if I can just veer off track here a little bit, that whole idea of talking about a slogan like more variety, more hits, music is better, that kind of stuff, that's all 80s stuff. They don't do that anymore. They shouldn't do that anymore. But those liners and those little claims that they make are a little outdated, and they should just be real, just like we're keeping it real on this show. So the idea of playing an hour of commercial for free, I think it's fair game for a commercial to sponsor it and say our first hour of our hour-long music free, whatever you want to call it, is brought to you by Arby's. And then do it and then come back and say that was brought to you by Arby's. But to interrupt that flow with either DJ patter or anything else, I'd say play the music. We used to track albums when they would come out on an AM radio station of all things. So that's what's up, Pedro. It's just weird radio mishmash, and that's what they like to do. Any of you guys have any experience with hour-long freebie that are interrupted with station gibberish?
Well, I noticed that it mostly happens on the very large, groups of stations where they're trying to promote what they do other than radio. So you'll see a lot of them promoting podcasting or digital media and such like that. That's what I'm familiar with.
Okay, so digital media. So every station has some angle. They've got some slogan, and it's always something that, like we play the best music. Well, that's your opinion, but that's not necessarily the listener's opinion. I just find those pretentious and a little over the top. Alex, do you have any station you listen to that make claims like that irritate the hell out of you? And they put it between everything. They're called liners in the parlance.
No, because I don't really listen to a lot of music stations anymore. So it's mostly talk radio, and I mainly listen to it just for traffic reports. I just can't stomach a lot of it, to be honest with you. There's not, you know what? It's not radio that's the problem. It's the talent, and I'm always attracted to the specific talent. We still have some big name radio stations here. It's just that it's the people that I go wherever those people are. And if they're not there at the radio station, then I just don't want to listen.
Yeah, and again, to reinforce what Mark said, the big music companies out there like iHeartMedia, Odyssey, etc., they have to promote themselves as often as they can. They have people sitting in rooms generating all those liners and breakers and all the stuff that they use in between the songs, because they want to catch the people's ears of the folks that are filling out diaries the old-fashioned way or just listening to the station. So they feel that the more times they mention the call letters, the more times they mention their slogan, the more likely they are to get remembered for one thing or another. And in Pedro's case, they're getting remembered for breaking their promise of playing an hour's worth of music without any interruptions or commercial broadcasts. So that's just an old way of doing radio. We did that back in the 80s. And I just don't think it's relevant in the 21st century that we drill those things into people's heads over and over and over again. I think we need to give people a little more credit for being a little more intelligent rather than being told what they're listening to. I mean, even the TV stations and the streaming services have slogans like HBO's famous, "It's not TV, it's HBO." I mean, how many times do they drill that into our head? So they all have these little, slogans that they've got to get in there, and they've got to push it and brand it because that's how they get remembered, I guess. I don't know. So I hope we answered your question there, Pedro. As far as any recourse you have, write to the station, put it in their public record. I can tell Mark is smiling when I say that.
Write to the station.
That they write to the station. Yeah, write to the station. That's already old-fashioned. But what the heck? Hand deliver a note to the station. Please, you broke your promise. You did. Or there are some people that keep track of that stuff. I mean, when I used to be on the air and we promised an hour's worth of music, I invariably get a call saying, "You played 59 minutes and 28 seconds, not a full hour." And it's like, oh, okay, I didn't. I broke the rule there a little bit. So people are very. People love to get spoilers in there any way they can. So that's the way it goes. Any other questions that we have for the moment that we want to jump into?
Sure. We've got a couple lined up here. John from Monterey's asking each one of us, how do we measure success?
That's a deep question.
About this much?
How much time do you have, John?
I measured about this.
This is a family show. By constant improvement. Always trying to improve yourself. Right, Mitch?
I would love it to be this much improvement. Maybe this much. Thanks for giving me the wide shot. So, measuring success. That's an interesting question. Who are some of those guys that do the self-improvement? What's the big guy? What's his name?
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. So how does he measure success? Well, you measure it by the number of people that watch your show. I would say that we would measure our success on this program by the number of subscribers we have. How would I personally measure my own success? I thought the other day that I'm not rich. I wish I had more money to pay for things that I like to have. But at the same time, I have the satisfaction of doing pretty much everything that I wanted to do. And I was pretty good at it. So I will measure success based on that, is that you're able to do what you like to do and you're good at it. For example, if somebody told me right now, you have one day to live, Mitch, what's your comment? And my comment would be, I have no regrets of everything that I've done. You know, sure, I've made some mistakes and done this, that, but I haven't hurt anybody in the process of getting to where I am. So that's the kind of success that I would measure, is being able to do what you want to do without stepping on other people's toes in the process of doing it. Anybody else?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, like, for me, the I set the bar extremely low for this show. If we get
What, are you playing Limbo?
When we started the show, I thought, you know, if we get anyone more than, or any number greater than 0, I'm going to count that as a success. No, I'm just kidding. For me in my personal life, I have a lot of small micro goals, and then I try to achieve those goals, and then I set a new goal, and then I try to achieve that. So for me, for example, like in my 20s, I used to be horrible with my finances, had a real issue with that. And it's taken a long time for me to develop better habits. How did I build those better habits? Well, I finally got a financial advisor and who tried to get me to change my habits. And, you know, what do they say about breaking habits? You know, it takes 90 days to break a habit. So you have to work hard at it. And I'm working at that stuff every day. So for me, I find success in that if I'm able to fix a problem in my life, then that's fantastic. It's not always tied to a monetary thing. I know everybody always likes to say, "Oh, I gotta make X dollar value," and look,
I gotta make X dollars.
Yeah, you have to be able to make enough to be able to live too, of course. But you know, I don't have these kind of grand ideas of just being this millionaire. You know, so for me, it's just like I try to set reasonable goals, and when I reach them, to me, that's a success. There's lots more examples I could give you, but I try to be reasonable with the goals that I set in my life. What about you, Mark?
Well, I think it's about not only money, but it's also about how do you help others? How do you constantly improve yourself, the group that you're working with? And you have to be flexible with it, because everything's going to have its own set of metrics to measure by. And so when you're doing something that's professional, you're going to have a different set of standards than when you're doing something that's more volunteer and trying to help others. And you just have to constantly have a goal of, okay, last time I reached this level, I'm going to try and attain a new higher level this time.
Well, that's very well said, Mark and Alex. Appreciate that from both of you. I think the other part of it is to attain success. Can you do it without stepping on other people? I mean, do you climb the ladder of success by, you know, hurting other people or screwing somebody out of a position or a job? If you feel that you've reached whatever level of success in your life and your business without you know, bringing other people down on the process, I think that should make you feel warm and fuzzy, and that's a good thing to have. And I think that's the way I feel. As far as this show goes, I feel we are successful regardless of the number of listeners or viewers we have, although we're up to, we have 12 people watching right now. Thank you very much. We'll have maybe 100, 200 after the show goes into can for rebroadcast. All these people are working together to make this program happen. It's not just me. I'm not just sitting here. Alex does a ton of technical work to make this show on every level to make it happen. So he's putting a lot of effort into it. The fact that Alex is inspired to be here, he's taking some bows. Go ahead. Cut to yourself there so people can see you bowing. I don't have control. There, go ahead. Bow. Take your bow. Take your slap on the pack. But the point I'm trying to make is that Alex himself did it. I didn't offer him any. He's not being paid a dime by me. We're not making money from the show. We're getting the satisfaction of viewers and the mutual respect that comes from other people. Same goes for Mark. Mark is here at his interest level. He just sort of volunteered himself in as the guy who was going to drive the questions in the program. Same thing goes for Laura Thompson, who manages our Mukana and what is her actual title? Can you pop it up there, what Laura's title is? Laura, do you have a title?
1 second here. Well, I
Laura's...
gave her the title of community manager, and hopefully
Good
she
enough.
hasn't
I love
complained
that.
about
Great
that.
title.
I like the sound of that.
And Laura's very, she likes to keep herself in the background, but she's there helping out. And we thank you very much, Laura, for your service. So success for us is the fact that all these people are working together towards a common goal. A couple examples out there of success. Any social media is a success if they have more than 200 or 300 people that are participating in it. So measure success on your own levels. My dad told me a long time ago, and he had a successful retail business, that you have to pick your arguments, so your battles that you have. You can't fight every single battle, and you're certainly not going to win every single one. So even in the dynamics of producing this show, I kind of like hang back on certain issues that we have. We were arguing the other day, not arguing, but we were discussing when we were going to remove the chat component from YouTube, and Alex just stood right up and said, "No, we're not going to do it." And I thought to myself, well, Alex he's feeling strong. He's going to die on that particular mountain. Okay. Alex is yours. You won that particular battle. I don't know if I've ever won any other battles on the show. I generally don't want to put my foot down and squash anybody else's interest. Somebody's discording me right now to tell me how screwed up that is. But so here we are. So that's the kind of success that we have. We're all smiling. We're all happy. When the camera goes off, we're not arguing. We're not like those stories you hear on soap operas or TV shows. Look at Mark. Mark, see again. You got to catch Mark when he's making that face. Go ahead, Mark. Make your face. There it is. Hey, that's right, Mr. Sarcasm. So I think we got it together here. We got a happy family. We have a happy family of people watching too. Mark, any more questions?
Oh, we have a bunch of questions. So
bring them on, buddy.
John has a follow-up question. What makes you happiest about reaching the 70th show?
What makes me happy?
What makes you happiest about reaching the 70th show?
It's the same thing that makes me happy to wake up in the morning and find out I'm breathing. It's a good thing. It still continues, and I think that we all agreed. And keep the three up here because I want to see the reaction from Mark and Alex. That as long as we're having fun and we're contributing something to everybody's lives, I think we'll do this. But when it just becomes boring and nobody's participating, do you guys agree? Do you agree that this has to be something that's worthwhile?
For me, I think to answer John's question, what makes you happiest? I'm just happy that Mitch and I haven't killed each other over the last, because we've had a few.
It's come close.
We've had a few fiery, ugly, like, whoa, where's this gonna go? This could be like a morning, what's it called?
We never really actually yell at each other, but
right.
We do have emails and texting back and forth. And first of all, let me just interrupt for a second.
Strong words. Strong
words. Never have an argument or a discussion via a email or social media or text, because it just escalates every single time into a giant blow up. Because you're missing the nuances of the person's inflections.
There's no tone.
You're reading it. You can take it the wrong way. And Mark, do you not agree that it's just
I
a
agree.
bad
There's
place?
no tone. But I just want to tell the audience that the real show is during the week doing show prep, when all the arguing goes on about what to talk about. That's what we ought to televise that whole thing. It's like WWE.
Yeah, let me ask you guys something since we're on that kind of subject. Is there anything I've ever done that you really hate, but you just haven't brought it up yet to me? I mean, over the year that we've been doing this, like, tell me now. I mean, I say keep it real. Is there something that I do? Mark's getting his notes out.
I personally don't like it when Mitch makes too much eye contact with me. It's very unnerving. Very unnerving. I'm just kidding. I can't honestly. No, I don't think so. But to Mark's point about our private conversations in Discord, they can get really heated. But it is entertaining. That could almost be another show. Maybe maybe that should be like a membership perk. And people want to hear that. They want that inside baseball conversation. So I don't know.
There's one of those annoying things.
You mean the sound deck?
The
See, I just
overuse
brought
of
it out because I knew it was going to annoy them. I'll get over it. If you don't call attention to it, I won't bring it up. Alex, I'm so sorry.
No, in reality, I think the conversations during the week are good because everybody is passionate about what they believe in. And so we're just trying to, argue what we think we should be talking about.
My browser history.
No, we don't want to go there.
Okay. I was looking for the Mark. What? Mark is our moral compass here.
The
at
HR department.
Yeah, he's our HR department. There you go. I used to get in trouble with the HR department, believe it or not. And this was like years and years ago. And, I was a classic, walking down the hallway and somebody would say, hey, good morning. It'd be a lot better if I was going out with you tonight. I was one of those people. And it took me a long time to figure out that that's not the way you treat people. So I'm admitting it right here. And we continue with our questions.
Okay, next question from Mitchell Hill. What's the minimum? Do we want to not do that one yet? Because there's another one from John.
No, it's fine. Let's go.
Okay.
Let's knock it out.
What's the minimum latency that humans can notice?
I'm going to give that to Alex.
Oh, I don't have an answer for you. I was thinking about that this morning. That's never been brought up in a conversation. And I'm not sure where you're going with that, Mitch. What do you mean minimum latency? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so we're talking audio, obviously.
Yes.
It depends on the individual. I have fairly sensitive hearing, and so, for example, I can notice, for me to not have a problem with, for example, hearing my own voice in side tone, if it's more than 2 milliseconds, it's going to bug me. A lot of people consider 5
that's awesome
milliseconds.
Numbers.
People consider 5 milliseconds pretty good, but it's jarring. It's too much. It's still too much late. It's got to be sub 2 millisecond latency for me, for it to be usable.
That's very sensitive because most people, it's more like 10, 15, or 20 milliseconds. Ask somebody like Roseanne Barr to sing, the national anthem in a stadium, and you'll begin to understand what's going on because you're hearing your voice coming back to you like seconds, and that's latency. And it will mess up your head. If you're listening to a tape recording and it's not a sound-on-sound recording, the separation of the record head from the playhead, I'm even talking about tape, that's outmoded, but we used to have to read copy onto tape and we'd hear our voices come back. If you ever see a newscaster doing the news and they're talking to somebody remotely and they just reach over and they just throw their headset down real fast, it's probably because the IFB has got a super delay on it, and I guarantee it's more than 2 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds. So latency is your enemy, especially if you're doing something live. It can be a problem. And latency also ties into lip sync. Can you catch lip sync on video? That could be considered latency because on YouTube or Zoom, there's always a certain amount of latency. I'm looking at a screen right now that's probably got maybe, I do it in frames, I'm going to say it's about 5 to 10 frames latency between when I talk because my lips are fluttering like a bad dubbed Japanese movie. That's something that's really sensitive because you're used to seeing people with their lips smacking it a certain way and making sure that the audio is locked up to that. Alex, are you good at picking the actual number of frames when you're watching something and somebody's talking and the sync goes out? Are you good at calling the number of frames?
I'm pretty reasonable. It's not going to be super accurate right down to the frame, but like you said, I can kind of ballpark it, plus or minus a few frames. Same with audio as well. I can tell, and it is noticeable. There is a certain minimum that you need in order for it to I think once it starts when audio gets within, say, let's say, 50 milliseconds of being off the video, you definitely notice. I think most people, maybe people that are not experienced in video production, wouldn't necessarily be able to go, oh yeah, the audio's drifting or the video's drifting or something's wrong here. But they'll probably feel that something's quite not connected up right. So I think some people have a hard time really kind of pinpointing exactly what is wrong. Now, if it's traumatic, like if our audio was like 250 milliseconds off,
Absolutely.
I think everybody would notice. Like it would be very,
Absolutely.
very obvious.
Yeah, I got that. I was just trying to fake it. I used to be in a lot of edit suites, doing a lot of editing, and I used to play the game with the editor or the TD that I could call the number of milliseconds frames that the lip sync was off. So yeah, it's a bad thing. And ever since digital came along, analog recording, it just was always coincident just by nature of the beast that it was with video and with audio. But now that we have digital, the processing time it takes for that audio to go out, get processed, and then brought back in is going to create some kind of latency. So you have to compensate for that. So it's a going thing, a going problem. And now back to Mark with another question before we go on to some of the headliner items here we have.
Okay, one last question before the headliners. Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas. Does China have Apple over a barrel?
Would that make it an Apple barrel?
I guess so.
Okay.
I have no idea what the context of the question is, so I'll leave it to one of you guys.
Well, I think what he's talking about, so, this has been a topic of much debate over the last couple of years, because obviously Apple has, let me back up for a second. Apple had all the majority of all their manufacturing in China. They've started to diversify now. I think what Paul's getting at is they've put all their eggs in one basket, and the problem is now with the growing tensions between the current administration and
tariffs.
China.
Sure.
And it's not just the current administration. We're not going to get into politics, but it's been tenuous for a while now. And so when you rely on manufacturing there, things can go wrong pretty quickly if relations with that country go wrong. So I think that's what Paul is getting at. They are now manufacturing iPhones and some Apple products in India. And I know they are manufacturing or assembling some certain high-end products like the Mac Pro in the United States. But they need to diversify for sure. I think I don't think by choice, Apple wants all their stuff made in China. I think it was by necessity because the tooling and the engineering
Cheaper.
and the staffing and knowledge was there. And it's really hard. It's really hard to fabricate.
I think Foxconn is who makes a lot of the Apple products. And my understanding is they make a lot of the products for a lot of the different companies that are making electronics. And they tend to move around to where they can get the best situation and environment for factories. So they move around to Vietnam and other countries where they can get labor at a decent rate, where so that their profits right. They can get materials easily. They can set up factories easily, and so I think that that's really more based upon where Foxconn is at a given time than where Apple wants to be.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is the mentality and the intellect of the Chinese government and the people that are making those decisions. And they're willing to manufacture things that here in the United States have been legislated out of existence because it poses an environmental problem, whether it's making athletic footwear or other things. And yet they'll do it in China. And you might say that China has given up some of their environment in order to make things happen quickly and logistically a lot faster, and they don't care so much about the red tape to make those things happen. They actually cut red tape to do that. It's also cheaper to manufacture in China. Your dollar goes a lot further. It's hard to ignore that when you're a capitalist country like the U.S. and us consumers are price conscious. But not everything, by the way, for Apple is made, like you were saying, in China. But we're concerned more and more about things like intellectual property in China. They really don't follow the rules as they might follow to the letter to a certain degree politically and otherwise. But there's a lot of shenanigans going on. I mean, you can buy a lot of bootleg or gray market product in China at a fraction of the cost that you would get it once it came back to the U.S. So there are issues there I think have to be dealt with. And the tariff thing is just sort of heating up, making it a big brouhaha. So it can be a problem. Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention in the chat too that Laura Thompson, our community manager, is just saying TSMC, lest we forget, is there, and that's Apple needs TMC. I can never say
TSMC.
that. TSMC. I can never say that right. They need them to manufacture the chips. Now, Apple is designing these chips in-house. They do have their own designers, but they do need other people to actually manufacture it, and that's part of the problem. Is they don't have the fabrication, they don't have the staff, they don't have the engineers to be able to build this stuff in the United States. If they could do it, they would have done it already. But it doesn't exist. These things, this is like a 10-year plan. Like, it takes 10 years to build a factory, to get the right people, to pay them at the right salary. Like, and also the other thing I think is that costs would go up quite a bit, because you can't pay people in the United States the same salary that somebody would make in China, because you wouldn't be able to survive on that salary. You have to pay them a much higher salary. And so what is Apple going to do? Are they going to eat those costs? Are they going to let that eat into their profits? Probably not.
Yeah, I have a client, New Balance, and they make athletic footwear, and it's a big deal that a lot of their shoes are made here in the USA. But the fact of the matter is, some of the shoes, like the 990s, and I'm wearing on my feet right now, were not made in the USA. They were assembled in the USA from parts that were provided. So that's going to happen for a long time to come, because some of the materials to make them, even carbon fiber, is a questionable material to manufacture, because it has environmental situations and conditions. And as Alex said, some factories just can't do it here in the U.S. Because of the red tape associated with it. So we're in a world now that we have to get along with a lot of other people. For example, China has a lot of the raw materials, and almost has them locked up for making batteries. Some of the materials that I think lithium and some other trace minerals are coming from mines that are owned by China. We don't have the same resources for doing that, because some of those products or materials are environmentally unfriendly here in the USA. So I don't know if we answered your question directly, but we did mention that it's not all bad what's going on with China, but there are some things that if we get into a trade war with any country, including Canada, Alex, it's not going to be good for anybody as far as I'm concerned, because when I open that maple syrup, I want it to pour, and I don't want it to be something that I got to regret having to go out and buy at an expensive, or a toque that I'm putting on my head. I don't want to have a big tariff floating on that. What other Canadian products can we mention? Moose and squirrel.
One thing that you guys get a lot of is we actually export a lot of water to the United States, and we export oil, and we export a lot of wood as well.
Yeah,
so logging is a big business.
If you look at a map of Canada, when you're seeing where everybody lives, they all live in the southern part of Canada. Everything way up, all the way up to the Arctic, I guess. It's like, well, it's cold and barren, and there's not as many people over there, I guess. How many millions of people live in Canada?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I honestly, I have no idea.
Know. I have no idea.
Ask. Let's ask ChatGPT. Think I could
ask
just pull that number out of my...
How many people are living? I'm going to guess.
Let's find
I'm going to guess. I'm going to say 80 million.
What's the
I'm guessing 80 million. Mark, what do you think?
Of Canada.
North of 80. 81 million.
North of 80. Thanks for that precise answer.
Okay, well, let's see. I don't know if this is accurate, Chat. Well, ChatGPT is pointing to several sources that
Just
are
take
Canadian.
one at random.
It is saying, as of mid-2025, Canada's population is approximately 40.13 million, based on United Nations estimates compiled by Worldometer.
And does that include Quebec and all the other provinces? Okay.
About 80% of Canadians live in urban areas. Canada represents roughly 0.5% of the global population.
Wow. So there's less people there than I thought. There you go. Yeah. What are you going to do? All right. We'll get back to some questions in just a second, but we do have some news items, headlining items that are on a rundown. And Alex, why don't you kick it off with what you have on your list of things that we can talk about, some broadcast related.
Yeah, so the main topic that I wanted to talk to everybody about today is, and this is the question, will broadcast TV go away? My opinion is that I think broadcast TV probably has about a 10-year runway maximum. They're already seeing huge drops in revenue, and I don't see it surviving. I mean, just look at how many people cut the cord. There's a big article here, and this is awfully Canadian-centric, but I think this applies to a lot of the industry here. So Chorus Entertainment, which is a big conglomerate that owns a lot of different radio stations, broadcast television stations, that kind of thing, they just said that the article here, this is from broadcastdialogue.com, Chorus Entertainment predicting further 20% TV ad revenue decline in Q4. And it says that they've already, this quarter, they slashed employee costs by 7% as part of an overall reduction in expenses equaling $10 million in cost savings. That's just the start of it. So
they're
what do you
losing
think?
money.
Do you think they're losing money left, right, and center? Do you think broadcast TV is going to survive as people move to streaming? I mean, what is the future for
first
for
let me jump
broadcast
in.
TV?
Let me qualify what broadcast TV is when you say it as a term. It's a terrestrial broadcast where a stick is out there with a RF signal on it, and it's broadcasting it with probably one of the network feeds or whatever they choose to do. So it's not broadcast TV does not include streaming services or rebroadcasting via the internet. So it's just the RF signal serving a geographic area, which is usually limited within 15, 20 miles of the transmitter. Broadcast TV, to me, is TV that serves up programming in a linear fashion based on a schedule. It's not doing it randomly. It's doing it in a linear fashion. So it's like when we want to see the live news at 6, we had to tune in at 6 o'clock to see Walter Cronkite deliver the news. If I wanted to watch Lost in Space, I had to tune in at 8 p.m. to see it broadcast at 8. Then VCRs came along and it allowed you to time shift. But for the most part, that's what I think of when I think of broadcast TV, is a linear presentation of programming to a schedule that's interrupted with commercial matter that helps supplement the cost of it. Mark, do you agree or disagree, or am I sort of on target?
Well, I think it's a complicated subject because there's so many parts that go into media. And, we started out with silent movies and radio. And today we're at FM, AM, the different networks for broadcast, as you're calling it. And then you've got the whole digital empire of all the internet, social media. And so there's just a lot more ways to consume that content that's being put out there. So is broadcast going away? Well, you have to ask yourself, who's the market for broadcast? And not everybody in the country has access to high-speed internet that can pick up the media. Granted, a lot of people do, and a lot more now did 10 years ago. But you still have to remember that not everybody has access to digital media.
But I'm saying that broadcast is not digital media, is not streaming. It is.
That's what I'm saying, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying some
okay.
people don't have access to digital because they either don't have the funds to pay for that extra money that you need to pay to get access to digital for internet reception or what have you, or they're in rural America and it just hasn't arrived yet.
Or they refer to it
take
as
away the
free,
satellite,
free TV.
Right.
Because it's
So,
commercially
over the air.
Supplemented. Yes,
Right.
over the air.
So
Sure,
over
exactly.
the air is typically has a limit to how far it can deliver that message. The reach, as it's called, is dictated today by the FCC, and you have to get a license, and that license determines how far your signal can go. So is broadcast going to be here 10 years from now? I think it will. I think obviously it's going to be a little bit different than it is today, but broadcast has the capability to be linear, as you described. I want to watch this at 6 o'clock at night, but they can also play that back at midnight if they want, just like cable TV does today, where you watch any of the news networks on cable, they're rerunning their daily shows overnight. So the potential there for them to I think there's more of a potential for it not to disappear entirely, but for the digital media and the broadcast media to kind of combine themselves into one opportunity. Because what's it? The main thing here is the content, not the delivery. No one woke up this morning saying, hey, I got to get myself some 30-second spots. They woke up this morning saying, I need to grow my business, right? And how am I going to grow my business? What's interesting about all of this is the fact that the Department of Justice just won 2 cases against Google. And they have a lot to do with the future of digital advertising, because Google's been accused now of having a monopoly. And how is that going to change? If you look at their revenue over the past few years, their revenue in digital advertising has been dropping. So is that something of the future where people are realizing that there's so much digital out there that it's really hard to target a message to a large enough group to make it worthwhile, whereas in broadcast, it's a much bigger return on investment if you're a company trying to get a message out. There's lots
It's
of
also
questions to
it's
this.
also methodology.
Right.
Look at the way we used to watch TV. I already told you the story where you had to tune in at a specific time. And if there were, what is the limit, 15 minutes of broadcast TV commercials per hour, that you would watch something and it would have a climactic point. Knight Rider we're watching, and Kit has just launched a car over a cliff. I know Alex is a big fan of Knight Rider. But anyhow, they cut to a commercial. And that became the norm, and we got used to that. Nowadays, if I'm watching a movie and it's coming to a climactic point, or I'm watching The Godfather or something, or Goodfellas, let's use Goodfellas as an example, and I'm waiting for the line, leave the guns, take the cannolis, and they interrupt for a commercial for something, for Geico. To me, that's just so counterproductive to the way that we like to consume media. And that's what's forcing us out of free TV into streaming media, where we're literally being asked, do you wish to pay for the option of no commercials so you don't have to have those problems? And I don't have a ton of money, but I'll tell you what, I can't watch TVs that are interrupted with commercials. It's hard on me when I'm watching YouTube because I don't pay for YouTube TV. It irritates me that I got to break for a minute in the middle of something that's exciting, and you got to sit there and tap your. I mean, we used to get up and use the bathroom or make a sandwich or do something else. So I think broadcast is sort of like having a wired telephone in your house. There's a lot of reasons why you don't need it anymore. And when you have to eventually cut the cord, you're going to do it reluctantly, but you'll find that you got along just fine without it. And then the same thing with broadcast TV and commercials is that's the dinosaur way of serving up media. They have to find other ways to supplement their income. Anybody comment?
And Mitch, I just want to cite one example because I don't know who watches these shows, but I find those breakfast television morning shows incredibly contrived and cringy. And when I think of when we're posing this question of does broadcast television have a future, the first thing that comes to mind is that right there. That is why it's dying, because those shows are just so awful and so fake, and so the presenters are fake, and everything about it is just so cringy to me. I don't know who's watching those shows in the morning.
There's some famous lawsuits about children's programming on Saturday mornings where the products that were being sold were so closely identified with the storyline of the cartoon that the kids didn't understand the difference, and immediately they went to Mommy, I want my G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip because I just saw G.I. Joe rescue some damsel in distress. And the FCC and the FTC stepped in and told them that they had to be much more careful about breaking the continuity between the storyline and the commercials, because kids didn't understand that. So, you have to kind of look at, I know that's just one example of many, but I agree with you. I think it was kind of a pernicious way of getting the advertising word in there. And back then, that was the only way that TV stations could generate any income. In England, it's a little different. They actually have a tax on TV sets. So they would have inspectors come into your home and say, well, you got one here, and then you probably hid the other one with grandma in the attic. But they count the number of TVs and they tax you on the number of the BBC does that, taxes you. I don't know how much they're enforcing it, but they sure did that a lot in the 80s and the 90s and so on and so forth.
But we kind of have that here. I mean, the cable
we don't have a
companies,
tax on TV.
They rent you your cable box. So in essence,
but that's I'm talking about broadcast TV now. A TV set with a with an antenna.
No, that's fair.
On it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because you do have the option of buying a streaming service, and you have the additional option of buying the streaming service that has commercials or not. And I'm irritated by my friends at Amazon because I have the Prime service, but somehow ads are sneaking into my Prime service. How's that work? Does anybody else have that same experience? There's ads that are coming into my Prime service, and I'm paying for it.
Yeah, you have to now. Amazon wants an additional $3 a month on top of your existing subscription to get rid of that, which I paid because I didn't want it, but I thought it was a pretty crappy move for them to do something like that.
And then jumping around to certain movies, if you're doing I want to see a classic Western, and they put that little cash register or something in the corner. And all of a sudden, you're paying $3 or $4 to be able to. I wanted to see this classic science fiction movie called This Island Earth. For years, I couldn't get a copy of it. I couldn't find it on streaming media. It just appeared on Prime, and I paid $5 in order to watch a rental version of This Island Earth, and it was great to be able to see it in full color, HD. It's great quality. But the idea that they can keep selling these products over and over and over again. Let me ask a side question to this. How many of you guys, when you buy a movie or rent a movie from Apple or one of the main streaming services, how many of you guys buy the movie so it's always there when you want it?
I've done that, but I still prefer, because I'm a video and audio snob, I still prefer physical media. So for anything that I care about that I'm going to watch over and over again, I will buy the Blu-ray disc. So
there you
most
go.
of
If it's
my
available.
collection is that. Yeah.
Mark?
I buy it. We just buy our stuff right from Apple.
I think we have a
big enough family that they can all watch it at different times.
Mitch, Paul in the chat
is
Paul is saying in the chat that he used to watch Imus in the morning, and he says, I bet Mitch was a fan of this. You ever watch that?
I liked Imus. Here's the thing. You think Imus was the original shock jock before Howard Stern. Imus was a smart man. He's no longer with us. And other than the times he got in trouble by making remarks about basketball teams, I enjoyed what he had. He brought the whole thing together. It was a family. And when I did mornings out of the blue in the early 90s on radio, I did the same thing that Imus did. I had the sportscaster in the room with me, I had the newscaster, the chief engineer of the station would come in, who was a curmudgeon-y old guy. It was fun, and I think Imus made you feel like you're a part of a family, so that when you had your morning coffee, it became part of your routine. And he was clever. And Imus, when he did an interview with somebody that written a book or something, Imus had read the book. Bill Maher does a lot of that, which is interesting. I don't always agree with his politics, but a lot of guys are doing that. So I hope I answered your question. Anybody have any comments about that kind of a show? And whether what is it, the morning coffee that's on MSN, Morning Brew, Joe, what's his name?
Well, I don't even have a
TV?
I do not have a cable TV subscription, so I wouldn't know what you're talking about because I wouldn't watch that stuff. I
cut the cable with
awful.
Well, I have cable in as much as I need it for the internet, but I had satellite TV with DirecTV, which, by the way, they just AT&T just sold their interest in it. I think some holding company now has it, and they're announcing that they're no longer going to be supplying satellite distribution. It's all going to streaming. So I think everything's going to go to streaming, and broadcast, I think, will hang on, like Mark was saying. But streaming media.
What's interesting is that the streaming media started out with no commercials. You pay X amount of dollars, and we're seeing that they're discovering just how expensive it is to operate these companies. And so now it's subtly going from, well, if you pay X amount, yeah, you're a member, but we're going to throw some commercials in too because we're just not covering the cost. And oh, if you pay us, as you said, Alex, $3 more a month, then we'll think about not having any more commercials. But you can see where these companies are discovering just how expensive it is to do broadcast right, whether you're doing broadcast
Yeah.
literally, but to
Yeah.
put out that content,
There's
no
going to be
matter
a
what the
correction.
media is. Yeah.
There's going to be a correction because there are too many streaming services out there. We can't afford to have all of them.
Well, it's already
We gotta
happening
pay.
now.
And I think
Yes.
what's going to happen is you're going to start to see people concerned with their own budgets about being nickeled and dimed. And you're going to start to see commercials come back because it's less expensive for the people viewing the content.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that the days of commercial subsidized advertising on TV are numbered or gone. Surely and don't call me Shirley. The major networks had better days. They made a lot more money 10, 20 years ago with supplemented advertising, paying for their news services and for their TV series. So now it comes right back to the public. Now we have to pay for a great show. So I'm watching reruns of Mr. Robot. That's an expensive show to do. And Apple's releasing, I think, the third season of Foundation on July 11th. There's millions of dollars involved in every episode. The difference is, and what's kind of interesting about this, is that Apple has other means of revenue associated with doing shows like that. They might sell more Apple TVs. You can have it in software, and you can buy the hardware Apple TV devices and such. But Apple has a bigger dog in the game, so to speak. Do you guys agree with that? That there's other ways that companies are related or unrelated? It's like the movie industry really doesn't like Netflix or Amazon or Apple, for that matter, for doing what they do in the motion picture industry because they feel somehow they're not the same when they give out their Academy Awards. But the fact is,
I think
they are.
And Mitch, I think things are already changing too, because one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people wouldn't cut the cord for the longest time is because of sports. Live sports was the last thing that people were just holding on to, but that's now changing. It's not perfect, but you got YouTube TV in the United States that's broadcasting football. Right, they got the NFL, and also Apple's doing soccer, and who knows with the success of this F1 movie, if maybe Apple is trying to get some of the rights to F1 live. It'd be great if I didn't have to spend $25 a month for the Formula One app to be able to watch a race live. So I think
Plus, that
stuff
movie
is
is going to
changing
theaters
now.
It's open to theaters now, but it's not available for rent. That's kind of interesting that Apple
It's a good
would do
movie,
that.
by the way.
How did you see it?
It's in the theater now.
Oh,
So you
that's
have
right.
to go-
Okay, so you went to the
I
theater.
saw it
to
in
see
I saw it in IMAX. It was a really good movie.
Okay, cool. Let's go back to more questions. They're popping in here.
Sure.
Mark?
Okay, Paul has a question. Is amateur or ham radio in jeopardy of losing bandwidth and frequencies?
I'll answer that. Yes. I mean, everybody that has an RF allocation is in jeopardy of losing the frequencies because, remember, it's the Congress and the Senate that decides how the FCC divvies up those frequencies. And if they can gobble up more frequency bandwidth for, we got it for 5G, now they're going to 6G, they want to sell that stuff off. You know how money is to the Senate. It's like crack cocaine. They just can't help themselves. So, yes, I think that if we don't have the American Amateur Relay League, I guess it is AARL, and forgive me if I did that acronym wrong, they have to continually lobby to keep those frequencies separate and safe. Same thing's happening in the satellite industry. C-band satellite, which has been used for years in rural areas, has been reduced greatly because they're giving up those frequencies to the big telecoms that want to expand their take out there. So write your congressman, tell them that you don't like that, and you won't vote for them if they mess with those frequency allocations. What if they do a repack of FM radio frequencies, Mark? What would you do? Let's say they're going to take your frequency.
Yeah, who knows? It depends what the options are. But we're seeing that a lot of the cell phone frequencies went to the satellites, or when it came from the satellites to the phones because they needed more phone frequencies. And, who knows what's going to happen. I can imagine there's a lot of stress on the emergency responding network where they're going to want more frequencies for that.
Well, that would be the argument. Military, Marine, medical, safety, EMT, all that stuff. They need to protect those frequencies that those need, but they don't need to expand them necessarily. I mean, they already have allocation. Like the FM band, as it goes up the dial above 107, I think now we're getting into some aircraft frequencies. I think that's kind of locked in, but who knows? I mean, the Congress and the Senate can do whatever they want, and the FCC works at their beck and call. So we just have to make a lot of noise when they see an opportunity to make some money by selling off those frequencies and repacking. They've done it to TV. They repacked all the TV stations. Your channel numbers, like channel 6 or 3 or 10 or whatever happens to be in your market, they're really not on those frequencies anymore. They've been pushed into another part of the band. So it's called a repack, by the way. And they have this AST, again, the acronyms. They've got an AST or 3. Version 3 that they're going to now, where they're going to put the so TV stations are not going to be competing on a regional or local basis as much as they used to, and more on content. So a lot of them, what they do is they extend their newscast, newsroom, and their weather operations into these secondary TV channels that are available to them. So, Mark, I'd be afraid. I'd be very afraid.
Well,
next question.
And let's go to the next question.
Hold on one sec. Before we do that, I just want to bring in the chat too, because Jerry Hoyle is saying, case in point, subscribe to Sling TV for 1 month to watch Wimbledon matches on ESPN. There you go.
Okay.
Churn is a problem.
Okay, Pedro Gonzalez from Washington, D.C. Do DJs use compression on their vocals? What effects are the panelists using?
I know what Alex wants to say. I'll tell you what actually happens. Traditionally, I'll do it, then you can do the reason why we shouldn't do it that way. Traditionally, radio guys are very particular about how they sound. So generally, they have a microphone and they have a processor, which could do compression, EQ, maybe a little noise reduction. I have the famous analog Symmetrix 528E. Sitting here next to me. There are other devices, but they like to do it at the microphone before it goes into the console and then out to the board for more compression and processing. And now for the opposing point of view, here's Alex Knight.
So I have to assume that Pedro is talking about specifically DJs as in disc jockeys for a radio station, not a DJ scratching records, because they do talk into mics as well. But yes, generally Mitch is right. Processing on the voice depends on the engineer, how they set up the radio station. I've been in radio stations where the processing is done at the end of the chain, as in what goes out to program to the world, but in your cans, what you actually hear is your dry, unprocessed voice. So it depends on how they've got things set up. Nowadays, a lot of radio stations have removed a lot of their analog gear and they've gone to digital consoles where they can more easily manage the audio settings. In fact, actually, that's one of the reasons why people love digital consoles now, is they can create artist presets. So if Mitch was doing a broadcast today at a radio station, he might have his own Mitchell Hill broadcast microphone preset it has his gain settings tailored for his voice. It has his compression settings for his voice and noise reduction, all that sort of stuff, whatever is tailored specifically for his voice. That's one of the advantages as well. For what we're doing on this show, I can tell you that Mitch, he already mentioned his analog chain. He has a little bit, very, very subtle, a little bit of compression, about 3 dB or so gain reduction. I'm not running anything. Mark's not running anything. And then, of course, what goes out to program is getting processed. And our audio chain's a little bit complicated because we're using Mimmo Live to produce the show. Thanks, Boink Software. And so our audio is coming out of Boink Software over Dante. And then the audio is going through my Yamaha DM3 console. And then there's 2 different gain stage and compression limiting stages in there. So just to bring up the overall loudness of the program and apply a little bit of compression to just get everything evened out, but bring up the overall volume as well. So we have our own chain, but I'm trying to do that stuff at the end and not doing the processing on the individual microphones. So again, different processes, different people like doing these things differently. Some people like putting individual processing on microphones, or they'll, put it on a bus and group everything together and then just apply a single setting to the entire. I'm fired.
Mark?
There's an additional reason why you have compression. You have a lot of different sources, studios, where all of the things that you hear are being produced. So they're all coming in at different levels. And the quality, the radio station engineer wants quality. So they are in post, or not post is not the right word, but at the end of the chain, they are running all of this through a compressor so that the volume's staying the same throughout the distribution network. Is that correct, Mitch?
Yeah, that's for the mix. But in the bespoke world of this box does this and this box does that, it was always the microphone, then the processor, then the mixer. And then all the other microphones, whether it's a news microphone or the secondary jock microphones, they all had their own dedicated processors on them. What's happening now in the new world of Alex Knight is that they now have, as part of the console, is that, like, if it's a Wheatstone, let's say, console, it may have a device in there that network enables processing. So on this one box, it might handle all the microphones in the place. And I think you got a picture of some of those. Looks like a Quasar console that's up there right now. It's all digital. I got a Quasar and an Axia. That's from our friends at Telos. They have a box that plugs into that console. That's just a control surface. It's not really doing any audio processing inside of it. But the box may be some kind of an IP-based audio system, and they might put the processors in that.
This is yours.
That's what I'm using right now. They don't make those anymore, but it's a classic, and it's analog, like a lot of microphone-related devices, and it sounds pretty good. And I do have it set a little bit of compression, but mainly so that if I get really loud and start doing that, it starts pushing it down so that it doesn't process like crazy on Zoom. But Mark, you have the same kind of setup. You got microphones and processors and the final processing, which most radio stations have, right?
Right. And then you have part of the issue with a lot of this is that you have all these ads that are coming in from different places, and the FCC wants you to have a volume level that's the same during your show as the advertising. So the engineers are trying to make sure that happens when they have all these different sources, and so that's part of the process.
Yeah, you would normalize material coming in from outside. Normalizing is a big deal. When I talked to my friends at Sirius XM, or it was Sirius when they were first starting out, their big thing was to normalize every single song that they had in their library to the same standard, so there wasn't a shift in volume from one song to the next, because they didn't want to process too much. But they were normalizing like, 18, minus 18 or minus 20, something like that. I forget the set. No, it was a percentage. So it would be like 95 or 85 or whatever your settings are. So normalizing is a big deal. And the FCC is involved now with setting levels on TV, but strangely not on radio. Television commercials volume is sanctioned by the FCC, can only be at a certain level. I think it's like minus 20 LUFS or something like that. I forget what the numbers are. Alex, you might remember what they are.
I don't know what the standard are, but yeah, the standards are for that. But you're right, Mitch. They do use the LUFS integrated program loudness as a measurement tool, because without going too far into the weeds integrated loudness is basically a way that we measure the entire contents of program audio, because human ears perceive things differently, and like that's the best way to measure audio as far as to gauge how we perceive the overall average loudness. You actually have to measure the entire audio to get that number properly. It's not just the peaks. That doesn't really give you a good idea of the overall content loudness.
Yeah, we used to do it this way. We had a VU meter, which would bounce at like close to 100, and that was the RMS, which would be the average volume. And then there was the peak volume, which was a fast-moving little meter setting that would move where it would track the peaks going. And the closer you got the RMS and the peak together, would increase the apparent loudness. So when you have average and peak getting closer and closer and closer, the sound gets louder and louder and louder. I mean, a perceived loudness, at least on the analog world. I can't speak to the digital world, but that's kind of how that works. That's why you have a separate compressor and a separate limiter on most radio stations. They have devices to do that because the compressor is basically a slow limiter. It works slower and it has a different ratio associated with it. A limiter is just there to catch everything peak that gets up to this point and just stop it, because there are FCC rules that require you cannot overmodulate and go above a certain point. So that box is there to keep that peak from getting through. Nowadays, the dynamic range of the average radio station, you'd think, well, it's got like 60 dB of dynamic range on FM. I don't think so. I think it's more like 2 dB. Because the meters are always like, I don't know if it is that way even during talk shows, Mark, but they want that loud. They want that loud. What are you pointing to? Alex is pointing to his meters behind him. Those look like RMS meters to me.
Yeah, I was just pointing to this meter, which is not accurate at all. This cost $100, but it looks cool. It looks cool on the show.
Yeah, I have one behind me. It's called a Duro, and it's showing RMS.
Now
and
that's
peak.
a nice one. That's a nice one.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's $2,000. But
peak
if you
program
see
meters, PPM.
You can't see it; it's not in focus. But you can see the little red dot. That's tracking the peaks of the music that's playing behind me, not what I'm saying. And the RMS is in the lower range. So you get to see that, how far those two come together to tell how much loudness. So that's a loudness meter, essentially. But yeah, that's an expensive one. But to be honest with you, for eye candy, like what Alex has got, he's got the better deal because he paid $100 for his and I paid $2,000 for mine. And even though Mike DeRoe and I are friends, it's like, thanks, Mike. It's nice. It looks cool. What are you going to do? All right, more questions coming in.
More questions. Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas. My local Hot Springs radio station just revamped with Angry Audio Rave. Should we have got the Flex or something Angry DJ talk about angry radio?
Well, I agree. I've invited Michael Dosch, who is the head brains. He's Michael Catfish Dosch over at Angry Audio. And I always thought that their company name and ours are synonymous. And the Rave, I think, is their new console. They've got a console. They just broke the price barrier. Usually when you buy a mixer for radio station, it's very bespoke, like mine is here. It's got on-off buttons, cue, things very specific to broadcasting. They would cost $10,000 and above. And I think this new Rave is like under $2,000. Yeah, or more. There you go. Got a shot of it. Can you bring it up and let them see it? That's like $2,000. That is just busting the whole paradigm for pricing. Completely different. And they make a lot of cool stuff over at Angry Audio. I'd love to have them on to talk about their stuff. They have another processor. It's built for radio for microphones, whether you have a Shure mic or an Electro Voice mic. They have a device. I think it's called I don't know what it's called. It's a whiz-bang thing. It's a compressor made specifically for that particular microphone. So I think that's a cool idea, matching the microphone with a specific processor. Because like the mic that Mark is using, RE20, even though it's a special edition, yeah, there you go. That's an EV mic. He could plug that into this thing, and it would take care of all the peaks and overages and stuff like that. It's about $900 for that box. So it's a real cool thing. Love to have one. Don't have it, but it does everything all in there. And Michael is a smart guy. Michael, come on our show. We'd love to have you here so you can talk about your new bug. That's a new mute button that they have, or cough button as we call it. I've gone on that quest before, famously on office hours, about finding mute buttons that don't click or make noises when they're engaged. And I ended up with a Studio Technologies mute button, which is very expensive, but does the job. I've had it for 3 years, I guess now. So there we go. More questions, sir.
More questions. Yes, we have more questions here. And unfortunately, the questions have gotten stuck. Okay. Can each one of you reflect on how your involvement in the show has changed over time? That's from John.
I'll start with you guys. I'll come back in on the back end. So, Alex?
I think we should go to Mark first because I've been pretty...
All right, back to you, Mark.
Mark wasn't at the beginning of the show, and he kind of came in later originally as a guest, who was a fantastic guest. Then we had him on again, and then he kind of just slowly... He wormed his way into the show, and he's been awesome ever since. And I think the show's better. I think the show is better with him here. And what's your take, Mark?
Well, it's hard for me it's hard for me to determine, from your all's perspective, how I've changed. But I started out watching the show, and then I became on as a guest, and then we started to utilize one of the Mukanas that I have. So I started to help out by asking the questions because poor Alex has a lot to do during the show in terms of all the technical things. And then Laura came in, so that started to help things out. And what's interesting to me about this program, like many of the office hours programs, is I think this is going to become the new radio. Because what's nice about, at least I'm going to talk about talk radio because I don't know much about the music side. But with talk radio, you have a caller calling in, having a conversation with the announcer, and that is a two-way conversation, and then you have this group of listeners. What this tool that we're utilizing here provides is now you have a whole group of people communicating with each other and the announcer chiming in. So with talk radio, if there are no phoners, as we call them, at a particular moment in time, the announcer can look over to his board, to his screen, and see what's going on, what everybody's talking about. The producers can ask the questions and vote on the questions, and it makes the show flow so much better than someone trying to continue a conversation because there's no more calls coming in. So, I'll let you guys talk about how your perception
I would like to comment about Mark coming on board. Mark is on the sales and the management and ownership side of broadcasting, and I think that Mark would sheepishly say that he doesn't really think that he's qualified to be on-air talent. I would completely disagree with any thought of that, and say that Mark is very much engaged as talent, and I've noticed a improvement in his ability to read questions and to present his ideas concisely and present himself. So he's just as much of a presenter and on-air talent as anybody else that I would say. So you need to get on your own radio stations and start reading editorials and making commentaries and doing things like that because you've made improvements. And like any instrument, if you use it, you'll get better at it. So, Mark, I'm so happy that you decided to stay on board. I think that it's a great opportunity for you to learn about this new form of radio firsthand so that when the time comes that you need to make that decision, you're well qualified to do it as an owner, as a talent, as a presenter, and a guy that's got to sell it down the road. So,
well, we're running some of our shows this way right now, where we have people coming in and doing this entire thing during a show that we do from 9 to noon during the week.
Sure. And we were just talking about maybe incorporating phone calls via Zoom.
Right.
So we'll talk about that.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Mitch, because I wanted to actually ask the entire audience. So for those of you watching and listening now, because we got a bunch of you in the chat and a bunch of you watching on YouTube, I want to get your opinion about this because I thought since we talk so much about the world of broadcast and podcast and that type of stuff and engagement and how do we build an audience and how do we talk to you guys and what's the best way to do that? Are we doing, and we like to explore different communication methods. I think the tools that we're using right now are really good, but I wanted to kind of explore offering toll-free call-in options. And I thought it'd be kind of old school to do this. And we're exploring now having this with Zoom, because apparently Zoom offers a toll-free phone service. I don't know how good it is. So I'm just kind of looking into that to see if we can use it to manage a queue of phone calls. But I just
threw a
cool
poll
to have
up.
people call
So
in.
we have a poll going in Mukana.
All right.
And
All
it's should we add phone calls to The Last Angry DJ? And your options are 1 yes and 2 no. And so far we have 4 responses for yes and 0 for no.
Oh, there you go.
Wow. There we go.
I
think
say
we should
bring
try it.
everybody on. It's like it's like the more people with an opinion that we get on the program that interact with us, whether it's real time or just slightly off real time by using Makana, the better. I would love to have a conversation, a two-way conversation with anybody that watches this program, and whether they're a heckler or a fan or not so much of a fan, I'll take it any way I can get it.
Should we start doing pranks? Should we start calling restaurants and businesses? And
that's actually illegal to do. It used to get
really?
away with it.
Oh
yeah. I mean,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, famously, I think I'm going to be Don Imus got in trouble for ordering like 10,000 hamburgers from the local McDonald's, and he got in trouble for doing that. Alex, why do you feel that as you've moved on the show, how do you think things? You've been here since the beginning, so we have no contrast there. But
I don't really have much to.
Your role's changed.
I don't know. I mean, has it? I don't feel that my role's changed as somebody who is the I guess what would you call me? A producer, a technical director, pushing the buttons.
Yes.
My role has gotten fairly more. I mean, I suppose more complicated over time. But fundamentally, my job is to make sure that we actually have a show, because I'm actually running everything behind the scenes. So I'm running the board, I'm running the camera switching, I'm doing all the graphics, I'm doing all that sort of stuff. So I feel like my role's been fairly static. And of course, I play 2 roles. I'm also a co-host. I'm talking on the show, and that's extremely easy to do, by the way. Just so if anyone's wondering, pushing buttons and talking, I mean, anybody can do that. That is such an easy job. You never make mistakes. Not one mistake ever.
Absolutely none.
Not that I'm
never seen a mistake. But you know what, Alex? First of all, you do a great job of what you do. And all of the responsibilities you've taken on, you made the decision to take them on. And my brilliant decision was just to stay out of your way. To me, that's the brilliance of operating a show like this, is to say, okay, well, he's good at it. I'll let him have his way and let it. We had that discussion about cutting the chat off on YouTube, and you came up with a very specific no. Let's cut that off. We don't want it. And I go, okay. I'm not going to die on that hill, as it were. But it's hard to draw the same conclusions that Mark has, because Alex has been here from the beginning. And frankly, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this show if Alex wasn't sitting here doing what he does really well. The question I have that relates to this question is, as the creator of The Last Angry DJ and the main host, do you guys think that a little overbearing? I know you're going to go nuts on it. So have fun, pile on. Do you think I'm overbearing? Do you think that I stomp out your creativity? How am I as a leader of the pack, so to speak? Not the boss. I'm not really the boss, but how am I? How am I doing? Am I egotistical and crazy and hard to get along with?
No, not all. I mean, we joke a lot about that, Mitch, but I don't think you're egotistical. You certainly have your convictions, you have your opinions, and that's totally fine. We sometimes disagree, but that's okay. It's okay to disagree. I see what you did there. That was very, very smooth, Mitch. Very, very smooth. But no, I mean, I think you're fine. I think you made the right decision when you realized that I had the technical knowledge to produce the show, that you kind of got out of your way. And I think that's the sign of a good leader is you find the right people to work with, and you recognize when they know how to do their job, is to just let them do their job as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to not voice opinions, because you've been very vocal about certain things. But hey, you know what? Not everyone's right either. I make mistakes too. And just because we're doing things, whatever the current iteration of this show is right now, doesn't mean it's going to be the same 6 months.
Good point.
Down the road. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the same show 6 years from now. This is an evolving thing. We're going to be constantly making changes, try to hopefully for the better make it a better show, and that's what it's about. Mark, how do you see it?
Well, I mean, this is a prime example today. We could have done this whole show just on the questions that got put forth. So the show is growing. The show is becoming more popular, and we can't do it without the producers. I mean, they are the ones that are putting forth the questions and telling us what they want to hear. And so I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, here we are. Typically, we'd be done by now, and we still have more questions to go.
Yeah, we're gonna jump into those. Just by the way, thank you guys. Appreciate what you have to say, because I see my job as being a benevolent dictator. Is the easiest way for me to put it.
You're a teacher.
A teacher. I don't really think I'm really good at teaching.
You are. You're very good at teaching.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Mark. So we will continue to go along until we have a battle that we can't resolve, and then the show will mysteriously disappear and just be out there for forever on the internet. Mark, more questions, please. Let's get off the subject.
Okay, we have a question here. What were the early drum machines that featured short samples?
I got to give that one to Alex. What were the first drum machines out there?
Oh, the very first? Oh,
Roland.
What was the very first? I would say the first drum machine that really made an impact and changed the way that records are made would have to be, and sorry, I don't have an image queued up, and I should have got this ready here, but I would have to say, and I'm going to talk extremely slowly until I have the image of this up on the screen.
So that's called multitasking
at all. I would have to say it's the Linn drum machine. And it
yeah.
Does everyone know what I'm talking about here? This thing?
Yes, I do. And you know what's interesting? If you look closely, there's a clap button on there for clapping. It'll play a sample of a clap. And there's a interesting story behind when this came out. Drummers and unions were totally against things like the Linn drum. And I remember when it was released. And the clapping, there was actually groups of people that would travel to studios, because that was where everything was done at one time, where they would do the clap fill-ins for the songs. It wasn't there was no digital stuff back then, and along comes Linn with the built-in claps that they could program and just trigger them, fire them off, completely like AI's doing today. Completely obliterated that job title. You know, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a clapper, clap on, clap off, whatever, in the studio. And they had a fight. The unions fought it and tried to sue the studios and the record companies, saying that they couldn't use these clapping machines. So good subject. I would have thought the Roland 808, but the Linn was the one that I first remember, the Linn drums. Absolutely. And remember like the songs from the 80s that had the syn drums on them, the toms that had it was a sound all of its own. And all that digital stuff, that was the beginning of things like the synclavier, the CMX synclavier, and then the Fairlight and devices like that that were playing actual samples. And today, you buy samples. I mean, you can have a whole string section in your recording. You're buying the London Symphony Orchestra string section or whatever, and you pay something for it. Mark, do you remember drum machines? No? Way back before your time?
It's not talk radio, so.
It's not talk radio. But maybe.
That's a good response. I just wanted to give some examples, too, with the Linn drum machine, because it was invented in 1982 by Roger Linn. And let me just look at this up.
Wow, what a coincidence.
Prince's 1999 album, which came out in 82, the first year the Linn drum machine came out. And a lot of people know that Prince was pretty prolific, and he was always experimenting with new technology. And he was, I think he might have been probably the first person to actually use it. So that is the first album that comes to mind that really made the Linn drum machine famous. Other example, another album that came out the same year in 82, which is the year consequently that I was born, Peter Gabriel's Security, an album in 84 called From Hysteria. Tears for Fears also, Songs from the Big Chair in 1985, and of course Madonna used it on the 1984 album Like a Virgin as well. So,
what was the Hall & Oates song that had the really chunky sequencer? Dun, 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 dun. I can't go for that that song. I can't even remember the title of it, but it had a really cheesy drum sound. as the background. That was like in the mid 80s, something like that it came out. So that was a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm just saying there were
Hall & Oates,
consequences.
I think, let's see if this information is correct. They use a variety of synthesizers, including the Roland Jupiter 8, very, very famous, Yamaha
That's a great sound.
DX7, a Prophet 5, Dave Smith, famous synthesizer designer, and an Oberheim OBX, another very famous synthesizer.
Yeah, and those are the early ones that had that were able to reproduce strings and things like. I mean, I had an ARP axe, and it said, "This is a horn sound." I went, "Wah!" And I said, "That's not a horn sound." A lot of the things when they came in with these devices is you had to learn to play the keyboards like a brass instrument, and if you couldn't do that, then you were just playing samples, etc. So, hey, little tidbit of information. More questions, please.
More questions. Okay. Alexander, how does the indie film scene in Canada compare to other countries' indie film scenes? That's from Paul. He'd like to know basically
I don't
how
know.
does Canadian
Paul,
indie films compare to the rest of the world?
I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not in the film industry. There is a healthy business. I know that there are plenty of talented, I know some of them actually, that have made movies that have gone to the Cannes Film Festival and Sundance, stuff like that, to show off their stuff. In fact, actually, my cousin is, she's in the film industry, and she just debuted her first short film. So there is a healthy business here, but I don't know if it's making any money, so beats me.
Oh, it's doing real well. Vancouver, big town for British
That's
Columbia.
True. There is a big business here. That's
it's
for sure.
A lot of stuff goes from Hollywood over to Vancouver. It's cheaper. The unions aren't the same. I think that just about every major movie that's done has some kind of Canadian connection to it. And also, you can't forget other countries. A lot of big film crews go over to a QR code. What's that there for?
Trying to
QR code just
that's
magically appeared
for people that join
for
Discord.
questions. Okay, got it.
Just ignore it.
It's there for questions. If you got a question, there's the QR code. Anyhow, they go like Czechoslovakia and Poland and some Eastern European countries. It's super cheap to shoot movies over there. Sometimes, like the sets for what was the Big Dragon series that was on HBO? I'm just drawing a blank. What was it called? See, nobody else is picking up on it like I am. Anyhow, a lot of that was done over in the Eastern Bloc countries. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. Next question.
Our next question is from John, and it's to me. How much time do you spend on all your different jobs? General manager of a radio station, your design company, and support of other media projects. Well, how much time do we have? Because this starts last century, and I'm going to go day by day through the entire century. No. In all honesty, I'm very fortunate. I have my father was an architect, and my mother was in drama. And in the 1980s, my father got involved with radio. So I didn't get involved with radio that far back. But at the time, I was in high school, and then I went on to grad school for architecture and took over my father's practice. And then later on in life, as my father and his partners got older, got invited to purchase the radio station and went on and bought some other radio stations. So I'm very fortunate because I've been able to keep the teams together, and they tend to run themselves, especially in terms of the radio station. In terms of the architecture station, I still oversee the designs and work with the group to do the projects we do, which are mostly transportation related.
Wow, Mark, that's pretty impressive.
And then there's this show, and that's where I end up spending all of my time now.
Oh, I don't know what to say, but we're so happy to have you here. And you know what's interesting is that as a radio station owner that's very hyper local, you seem to be right at the tip of the iceberg for where I think radio has to go, because these big companies aren't look at it. When you find out that the top 5 major companies that own radio stations around the country, a lot of them are in bankruptcy or some form of bankruptcy or certain hurt and financially. Something's got to give. I don't think it's going to get better for them. I think it might get better for small mom and pop organizations that run hyper-local operating in their particular markets. I don't think an iHeart or a Odyssey could operate a live and local station in your market, Mark, down in Salisbury and Lewis and Rehoboth. I don't think they could afford to do it.
Well, they have a
because it
couple,
falls
but-
outside their realm.
Yeah, they have a couple. But I think, I'm fortunate because the team that's been at the radio stations has been there for a long time. They understand what was set out by a guy named David Shoemaker, who set up the stations and ran the stations. My father was not that involved in the radio stations on a day-to-day basis. But David was able to set this up. He studied under Walter Cronkite when Walter Cronkite was doing radio. Then he himself went on to ABC News and became one of their anchors, and then retired from television and got into radio station ownership with my dad and some of the other partners. So I'm fortunate that a lot of those people have stayed with the group, and the station primarily runs itself. I certainly don't have the history or the knowledge about radio to run it by myself.
Don't sell yourself short. What are you going to do? Well, that wraps up our questions for today, and it's makes sense to jump over to Alex so he can explain to us how to keep in touch with us. And the new thing that we do now with Mukana is you can, after Monday, anticipate the coming week's show and get your questions in there. But go ahead and tell them how they can reach out to ask.thelastangrydj.com. Alex?
Thank you, Mitch. Yes, you can go to ask.thelastangrydj.com 7 days a week. We accept questions starting on Monday, but you can post every day. We reset it after this show. But yeah, 7 days a week, you can go there to do that. You can also join our Discord community. I had the QR code up on the screen. I'm going to put it up again. We need more people in our Discord community. I want that thing to blow up, but we need a little more lively chat happening in there. I've got lots of different
Green
channels
is people.
in there. And don't interrupt me. Come on, man. I'm doing a pitch here. What are you talking about? We don't want to lose our audience.
All right, goodbye.
Scan the QR. Now I'm all discombobulated. Just scan that code. Oh, don't scan the QR code. What do I care? It doesn't matter. I don't really care either way. You can also find this show as a podcast in your podcast player of choice. If you don't want to watch the video, we are available in audio format for your morning commute or whenever you want to listen to the show. You can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, Google. You can ask your smart device to play our show. It should work. You can also find us on social media at The Last Angry DJ on pretty much every platform that counts as well. And you can also find our website, thelastangrydj.com, if you want to shoot us an email there. There's lots of different ways to get in touch with us. Also want to mention that there are various ways you can support the show. I mentioned that you can subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, but also you can donate by going to patreon.com/thelastangrydj. That's patreon.com/thelastangrydj. We would sincerely appreciate it. And of course, we would like to thank the people at Boink Software who make this show possible. Memo Live is the program we're using. So if you need a tool to produce your own podcast or show, we would strongly recommend you check out Memo Live. So thank you to those guys for your help. And that pretty much wraps it up, Mitch.
I appreciate that. And one last thing, what I want you to do, we want you to press the subscribe button, because without that button push that you have to do, you smash it or push it or however you get to it, we don't increase our number. We're like at 203 right now, regular subscribers. So not just 203 listeners, but 203 subscribers. Subscribers are very important because that allows us to get higher end guests on the show. They always ask me, how many subscribers do you have? And I have to tell them, we have hundreds. We have hundreds. And when they give me a hard time, I said, even Joe Rogan had to start with that number of people. He may not have stayed there that long, but he had to have 200 at one time or another. So we thank you folks that are subscribers to the program. And, of course, our subscriber, Arby's, our sponsor, Arby's. We have the meats, and they also have an app If you get a chance, try their app out. It's great to have it on your phone. You get your sandwiches a lot cheaper and get regular information about what's available for that particular day. Try the new Angus grilled steak cheesesteak. It's awesome. I've had several of those, as you can see. And after the show, I'm going to be running out there to grab a few more myself. Interesting show today. We got a lot more Mukana questions in. Thank you for those. And we covered a lot of bases. And we're going to do a similar show next week. So, as Alex said, make sure you get your questions in on Mukana after the reset starting on Monday. What time is it? Morning? First thing you do that?
Well, I reset it right after the show. So if you just wait an hour after this show ends, you can do that.
Wait an hour and see that. And as always, thank you so much for your input. We appreciate that. We'll explore the idea of getting you a phone number, do it via Zoom or whatever. That's an interesting concept, and we want to stay in touch. We appreciate your commentary. And until we see you next time, stay safe.
Swagger down the street with your red lips and funky beat. You better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die.